Welcome, Jos. It's really great that you've come across today to talk to us online. So I really appreciate that. But it'd be really nice if you could also introduce yourself so that everyone knows exactly who you are and how influential you are in the contour industry.
Oh, I'm Jos Berry. I'm the founder and creative director of Concept Spares, which is quite known in the whole industry. I started with Concept Spares in the end of the 80s, after already have worked in lingerie, but in different functions. Also as a journalist, I researched after the 60s or beginning 70s. I researched the anti-movement towards lingerie and came to the conclusion that lingerie actually, and I did that a whole year. I went to shops and I went to work in all kinds of different parts of the industry to understand what was happening then, because I found it quite interesting. I came from ready-to-wear, and that lingerie had such a violent reaction at a certain moment from women. We call it burn the bra. Now there was a whole thing, and when I read yesterday an article in the Guardian, we are almost full circle. We are almost going there. Braless, the bra as a conformist tool. Now, yeah, okay. I have been through the whole process, but the thing that stuck with me, and that I've missed that a little bit in ready-to-wear, is the enormous deep connection between women and their lingerie. That was very interesting. So I started to study more anthropology, social behavior, etc. And I got very, 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 very interested. And at a certain moment, my husband had bought a styling service, international. That was the fashion service at that time, very big. It was in New York, and my colleagues there, they were looking at shoulders out, shoulders in, skirts up, skirts down, and that has nothing to do with lingerie. Lingerie is another language, is another emotion. So I suddenly started to be surrounded by big companies in our own business, the big names at that time, and I thought, gosh, and they said, why don't you specialize in lingerie, because we really need that. So I specialized in lingerie with a complete different parameters than the other typical styling services. I looked at women. I looked at women behavior. I looked at women liked. I looked how they were wearing lingerie, what lingerie should do for them. And between me and the lingerie industry, there is always a little bit of a tension, because the lingerie industry also has a tendency to put everything in one corner. So the woman wants that, and my understanding of lingerie is that enormous richness of expression, which is exactly like women want it. There is, of course, a technical thing, which is also at the moment a very important issue, fit. Because with the whole globalization, the specialization of some brands, there were much more brands when I started, which were very specialized in fit and look, etc. Now that went a little bit out of the window, but because globalization means uniformity. And so the tension at the moment between the consumer, things like body positive, because they can't find anything anymore, the whole ethnic element of people with different skin tones, that all comes to a moment. It was already boiling up before the crisis, before the pandemic, but it's at the moment. We are more or less there where we were in the 60s, when the revolt was against a certain conformism, how your body should look. You should have pointed breasts and hips in a corset and girdles on. That was sort of, we want to decide how to be free ourselves. Now the revolt is a little bit against we can't find what we want. So that always has interested me, and I have never kept quiet about my criticism towards the industry, and that obviously pleases a lot of women and a lot of people working in the industry, but there are also people who really don't like that. At the moment, at a certain moment, I got myself. It was in the beginning of the 2000. I got myself surrounded by a very big part of the industry, the real leaders, the big brands, and we still have them as clients if they still exist, because a lot of those big companies, especially in England, like Courtaulds, and they all dissolved in and became united in new companies. So at a certain moment, the fair came to me, because I organized all kind of stuff outside the fair, like soirees and very interesting gatherings, always dealing with a problem or with a proposition or with a change in women's behavior. There were all kinds of direct links with how women behaved and their lingerie. Think about Sex in the City, had an enormous influence. And so those were discussions. What are we doing about it? What does it mean? What in reality? And so then the fair came, and they said that you can't go on like that, because you start to hinder us, do it for us. So then I'm sort of in 2001, I refused it at the beginning, because I was never a person who liked to make fashion forums, because they are too systematic. I believe believe basically in chaos. I think it's out of chaos that creative people can pick their own soul. And so you would never, like the French, who were very Cartesian. I never was in that mood, and sometimes I had the most crazy ideas, and that obviously an international public like that a lot. The French always. It was a little bit difficult in understanding what I was actually doing, because I always was saying, look at that woman, what she is doing. She now wants to wear her bra like beachwear, for instance. So that whole change from isolated classification into a sort of borderless a new world, that was always very difficult for the industry, and we register that by looking at consumers. They constantly being there where they were. So that was not too bad, because in the summer we run around in Saint-Tropez and on the south of France, or in the beach things, because there you could, the moment they undressed, ideal. But in general, it was more less pleasurable, by just reading a lot, by looking a lot, by shopping a lot, by talking a lot, and with a group of very big companies as clients, they gave us enormous knowledge back.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting thing about all the emotive side within the contour industry and everything. And I think, we are seeing this like gaining momentum again about talking about different things. And we asked the graduates to research and present if they had their brand, what kind of ethos and values they would like to have as a brand. And I think, talking about not just about the products, but also about the ethos behind the brand, or the values they have. So in terms of that, how important do you think it is for contour brands today to communicate with their consumers about their ethos and their values that they have about like diversity or sustainability or anything like that?
I think it's life or death. As simple as that. Because I have a final webinar tomorrow with leaders of the industry about tomorrow, and widening horizons. But there is one element that I think is very, very important. The industry has to change or reinvent their narrative. They can't go forward being a brand, and then in that brand there's everything but the kitchen sink. I mean, you don't know what they actually specialized in. So that's one thing. A big brand normally has everything. I mean, from very conservative merchandise to very very trendy merchandise, and you don't know what the brand is really standing for. Now, in this time of history, where we want to know where it is made, what the brand is doing, they have to tell us what they are standing for. Not just saying to us we are good. We have a lot of technical people working for us. No, they have to have a story of love and commitment with us, and they should start to know that the last couple of years, that was one of my worst experiences in my whole career, when one after the other started with a sort of blame games. The consumer, they literally told nobody is wearing the right size. Could be. But did you ever hear an industry selling something by telling a consumer that they were to blame for doing the wrong things? I thought they must be. That is amazing, because why didn't they wear the right size? For a big part because of the globalization, brands were narrowing the SKUs. The SKUs were as little. There was a homogenization of a lot of collections, and buying online, of course, is hit or miss. I mean, whatever, and every brand has a so that is the number one thing. So they have to make a choice. They have to really make a choice what type of consumers they want to service, and then make studies, and then make sure that they're doing the right things, and then they have to tell the consumer if they want to have sustainable, so when they want to be known for sustainability. Because listen, I'm not very interested in somebody who suddenly makes a campaign with an underpant line, and suddenly bragging about their sustainability, but the rest of their collection is part of this is produced in Bangladesh. And now that, I think, is absolutely out of the questions tomorrow. I think a brand should be a brand, and in other sectors of this fashion industry, that's far more the case. Especially the new successful brands, you know what they stand for. In lingerie, it has become a label. A brand was a label, and when they were very big, they had collections from if they were 120 years old, they had collections with part of the 120 years, and then added and added. But what the heck they were, you don't know. And so that is certainly important.
Yeah, I mean, also, we are seeing so much more online, and with recent events, I think, we've seen how important this digital imagery is and how it needs to connect to a wider audience. So, one of the things the graduates obviously were challenged with was when we went suddenly into lockdown, they were suddenly taken away from being able to make their final collections, and look at ways of creating innovative digital content, and again, sort of using that to communicate with their audience and everything. I mean, how do you see this digital world within the contour industry? How do you think it's going to change things? And do you think, this virtual or sort of digital world is gaining more importance in the fashion industry, in the contour industry?
Honestly, I do not know. I'm like a lot of people, it's very new. I have seen fantastic examples. I think communication wise, it definitely is an opening. But I think there as well, people have to reinvent how they use virtual communication and digital designing. Of course, it helps with the new software. The most beautiful life type images can be produced. I mean, they can scan my body and I can see myself in the newest garments. The question that nobody has answered yet: do we want that? Do we really want to see ourselves, or do we want to stay close with our dreams? No, that is so. I'm still wondering about the how are we overlook our senses, because we have touch, we have looks, we have smell, and all those senses they form our perception. So with digital, we are more or less jumping over that, and it is only the visual aspect. Now we know for sure that creativity and whether creativity is only in the perception or is in the maker or is in the construction in it, we don't know very much how you can go, but I think as a storytelling tool, of course it's interesting, very very interesting. So it needs again creativity as a replacement of what we are doing. I don't see that at all. I see it as a complete new language which needs to be learned.
Yes, I mean, you know, it's amazing some of the new software that is happening out there. And, you know, some of our students did some really interesting things to sort of kind of make it quite interactive with videos, creating like digital games where we could dress up mannequins in their collections, creating like virtual catwalks and things like that. So, you know, sort of being really quite inventive as to how they use it to display their work and everything. But the one thing that we sort of kind of missed was, you know, in this industry, we have this fantastic supply base of materials, you know, and it's becoming, I think, again, quite innovative. Again, we're seeing sustainable textiles, but we're also seeing some really beautiful craftsmanship being valued at long last, and sort of people talking about materials. You know, how important do you feel is, like you say, that the touch, the feel, especially, you know, when it's intimate and it's next to the skin and things. So how do you feel the textiles, you know, how important are they to the designer's creativity and the value and the individuality that they give across then in their final garments?
I think it's certainly in lingerie. It's more or less probably. I think in the whole work to create something, it must be 90% of the work, because it's we contour, we are busy with to create something 3D or 4D, even when you take certain aspects with it. And so the element of what the textile can do for you in your perception of your creativity is very important. But we have come to a situation, and that is where I hope we are changing. I read in the Financial Times, for instance, a fantastic article: is the pandemic the end of the supply chain? Because in the last 10-15 years, the supply chain has taken over, for a big part, the choice of materials. A designer can say, now, a board, make this nice, it can move, but perhaps it's a bit virtual. And then in a bigger company, there comes a guy, and he says that you're allowed, for that part of your design, you're allowed to spend that, because in the whole supply chain, when they put all the elements in, including transport, etc., so you can't spend more than that. And now, so a designer, for a big part, and certainly in certain brands, were put outside that discussion. That discussion was not a design discussion. So what you see now is all those startups who are basically back to the old days. They find the material, they have their ideas, and there it starts. And what makes people very nervous is their success. Some of the people are extraordinarily successful. In a small way, because they start with their own money and with their own possibilities. But there are small brands which are if you talk with them and when you hear how they deal with their fabric suppliers and how they work together with the designers of those fabric suppliers, that's a new world. That's a world which is much closer to what it should be than we have seen the last couple of years.
I mean, we also really talk to the students about not necessarily looking too quickly at that final outcome, and actually doing that kind of process of creativity and trusting that process, and really thinking about that level of inquiry and experimentation. And a lot of the students manipulate the fabrics, add to the fabrics in terms of beading, or sort of how they craft around the laces and embroideries, or the boning and the structure, looking at heritage corsetry and things like that, in bringing that into the designs. So they sort of kind of really, like you say, go back to almost that sort of previous process, where sort of they have to understand that process, that a polyester will drape and react and feel different to a silk. So that whole sort of level of inquiry, is really important. So, how do you feel that the graduates and these, and like you say, the excitement around these new startups, how do you feel that they contribute creativity to this contour community, and how they can actually get across this sort of individual, their personal ideas, so that the industry isn't so dictated to by, say, the commercial, the supply chain element?
Now, then, I mean, there at the moment, of course, there are more different groups in fabrics or in materials. But than two. But let's say there's a big difference between a smaller in Europe producing company. Now let's take wider Europe. Let's take Turkey with it, and the whole East Bloc, and they're incredible creative companies. And what is the majority, what is in the market, which is produced in China. And in China, it's an industry, a Chinese manufacturer. There are exceptions, of course. We have fantastic clients, which are also very artisanal in China. But in general, the only thing they want is production and volume. So there is no time and there is no interest in young people or designers working together with them. In every European company, which are very often family owned still, there is a big interest in young people when it's serious. But the point is, of course, at the end they want to earn money. So when a young person has find a job into a bigger company and can say, okay, here I am researching for that brand, the doors are going open. That is for sure. And we feel as a trend service, after we have proven that we are not coming to pick their ideas and to hand them over to somebody else, we have felt and we have experienced an enormous support of the fabric industry always. All the doors are going open when we are asking questions. So because people need that interaction as well. So that is quite clear. But one of the problems of contour education is, and that goes for all the fashion schools, not only contour, is your agenda is not exactly at the same seasons very often as there is a whole part, for instance, when there are fairs where that doesn't coincide with the holidays or with the end of years programs, and that has very often be a handicap. So and then there is that idea of working together with the industry. Now I'm pretty sure that they certainly now, even more than before, are very open.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, sort of, I think, we do try to build that connection with industry, and I think, sort of like that knowledge exchange and that partnership, hopefully will just continue to grow, and the benefits that will come from that, I think, are really interesting. And talking about sort of like researching and looking at like sort of back in history and looking forward, we are in the major projects that they do, we always get the students to research and to look in depth as to who that consumer is. So, saying about really sort of understanding who that woman is, or who that man is, or who those people are that they're looking to sort of put these products in front of, thinking about who they are, how much they're willing or can afford to spend, and things like that. And we're seeing more and more diversity within the industry, and we're seeing more fashion coming into contour with the social media, and we're seeing more blended models as well, where it's almost a bit of mix of ready to wear mixed back with contour, and not such a traditional sort of way of structuring things. And so how essential do you feel it is for the contour designer to really understand this consumer?
Crucial. Without any doubt, they have to. They at the end, that makes lingerie so totally interesting, because it has such, it's fashion. It deals with influences from the outside, from general movements in fashion, from the ebb and flow of color, materials, etc. But at the end of the day, it also deals with an enormous amount of technology, and there is where you see that there is a sort of natural selection, where you also in the suppliers, in most brands, you see in general people who are more serious in what they're doing than in the typical trendy ready to wear industry. They are there. That can also be a handicap, because there are also people who call themselves they are into fit, or they're into to grading, and they are so stuck within their technology they have used for a big part of the career, that they're not really willing to go outside of that. But I think lingerie is incredibly interesting. But on the other hand, there is also there are big movements, how people want to wear lingerie, how people want to use lingerie. I think students should know more about that. That is what my observation is. Every year, that, for instance, certain universities, you can count on it. Every year they come with a complete, fantastic, executed. Nothing, no critical about that. Of corsets, and you think, yeah, but we need you actually not for corsets. We need you to find a new language for where the industry is going. And so it's not only looking at consumers, but also looking where the big movements of the industry are. At this moment, when you hear that Nike and Lululemon together sell more bras in America than the whole bra industry together, then there is something going on. The students should know that. And then there is the question, does every woman want a sport bra? No, but somehow the sport industry has found a secret, a solution to the secret of those fantastic amount of sizes which develop. So that should be studied. That is the part of the cumbersome technique of lingerie, where you have to see at a certain moment when sport bras become a real threat for the traditional lingerie. They should know why.
Yes, I mean, sort of we look at social different things, but certainly that casualisation, that sort of movement away, sort of even just looking at how consumers or people are dressing, sort of even just to say looking at London and looking at how people on the tube have changed over the years. You look around the carriage and the majority of people are in trainers, sort of not many men are in suits and shirts and ties anymore. Everyone's in far more casual clothing. And I think now, especially with lockdown and working from home, people have adopted even more casual, comfortable style garments. I mean, it's really interesting sort of talking about sort of like, sort of fit and things like that, because obviously we're seeing a lot of like this virtual world, and we're seeing a lot of things happening with around size, a lot of data being collected, algorithms being picked up and used and things like that. But despite all this virtual world, we still all want these beautiful products to own and wear, or casual products that are comfortable to wear. So, we do say to the graduates, they need to think about sizing and fit, and they need to think about pricing and colour, and understand all these things and how the fit and the feel and the function of a product, can't be lost, especially in contour. So that skill and knowledge is essential to the industry. So, how do you think the graduates in the industry can ensure that this skill and knowledge of the real final outcome is appreciated and not lost? Sometimes it's quite hard to understand the skill and knowledge that goes into making bras and things. So how do we make sure that it is appreciated by the consumer and it's not lost?
Yeah, I think you can't blame the consumer, because at a certain moment, that's a lot of brands are always angry about that. I make those bras so beautiful, and look what they buy. Yeah, sorry. That's what happens. So why didn't you pick up on the first signals? It's a very interesting a sort of really a shock effect for a lot of designers to realize when they enter in a big company or in a big retailer, and they start to think about that, and they're absolutely sure that they themselves and all their friends, and we have been in that situation, nobody we knew was wearing one of these one size plus padded cushioned bras. Nobody. But measured against the total volume produced big from China, that was used as a proof that we started with those little triangles and with the bralettes, and that has gone through 5 years, 6 years at least. Now that's reality. That's reality. There is at a certain moment a tendency to believe only the largest number, and that's very shocking. And yeah, that's one of the silver linings at the moment. That will probably not work anymore. Probably we are looking for companies that have to somehow study how they can, within their brand story, how they can diversify in design and in functionality, meaning that they have to produce more specialties, each with smaller production volumes, which is a difficult decision to take, because who wants to do that when a minima in a big company in Sri Lanka is 50,000 pieces per color per style, and you come and you only think that you can sell 2,000, finding a different producer. And then comes the problem that you want the same, because the biggest have often the same technology, the best investment with good technology. So that's another element, because in lingerie, and that is very sad for a lot of smaller companies who produce it, then you see that label handmade and you think, oops, fantastic, beautiful when it's laces and when it's fine work and very small sizes. But when it comes to bra production, you need the newest technology when it's absolutely up to date, to have your borders clean cut and bonded. Don't come with a 3-point stitch at that moment. So there is that complicated element of the different technologies. Plus, there is that direct contact with the consumer, and that is, of course, a very interesting change at the moment, which a lot of brands didn't have anymore. Do not forget that, because they are the buyers. And I've been in presentations with the most beautiful collection, really completely new, a designer label from a big brand new. Now you expect that a big buyer is jumping on it, saying, now they're big brand, fantastic, and now they come with this revolution. No, they say, we have sitting you in classics. We don't expect you to come up with something that level revolutionary. Now that will probably change as well. because now everybody can have contact directly with the consumer. There is no, that wholesale part is slowly but surely disappearing.
Yes, I mean, this direct to consumer is really interesting. I'm conscious of your time, and I really have appreciated you talking to me today, Jos. If we round it up and come to like a final thing, what sort of advice would you kindly pass on to the LCF graduates that are going to enter now? They've just graduated and are about to enter into the contour industry. What advice would you have for them, please?
I would, even when it's not my style, when they all have an idea in their head what they like best, I would try to get an internship first in a company which is technically very avant-garde, or a retailer, because there is something that a lot of young designers who come from fashion school, they don't know. And even big fabric companies who deal with those people have fantastic knowledge of how things are done, and that is very, very important. I would say your sort of basic stuff that a contour education can't give you all that, how a real big brand works. And then after that, if you have done that, you can still, but then you're already equipped with a little bit more of that how a product is made in reality.
Yes, I mean, we talk about the theory, we talk about various different things, but it's not until you put it into practice that suddenly, you know, that adds to that knowledge and makes it come real and everything. And I think it is a fantastic industry and a very diverse industry, and I see it getting even more interesting and changing in the immediate future. I think, as you say, like even at the Eurovet Vision with like Exposed and some of these areas and these new startups and things, the industry does seem to be you know, changing and becoming quite exciting in the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. It was lovely to talk with you.
Thank you ever so much, Jos. No, I really do appreciate you spending the time.